Like you said, Elvis. Now I was thinking like Eazy-E and Elvis together. How crazy would that be?
People are going to think we're so old because you just said like the generation of kids today, millennials.
This will be as big as like the internet was, as far as changing the entire face of the planet and the way people do things. How do you know if it's real?
And then, on the flip side, what if an actual murderer says, no, that's not me on camera, that's a deep fake?
Where we are with AI right now is where we were with the internet in like 1997.
All right, welcome to another Kitchen Sink Microscopy, this one and all others after, from Germany and America. And I'm Casey Rochford.
Yeah, and I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and I'm hoping our audio levels are balanced. It probably won't be, so forgive us. This is if I'm too loud and Casey's too quiet, well, we'll get that stuff sorted out after this.
I should have moved to Italy, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Then I'd be really loud.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see.
Learning all the stereotypes over here.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and yeah, this is a kind of new thing. And Casey and I, we write our own music, and we'll probably have a new song maybe at the end of this episode. Maybe not. It might be something old, but whatever. There's going to be our music at the end, so enjoy that.
Yeah, y'all don't give a shit anyway.
So. Yeah, exactly. People just come here and skip right to the music. So anyway, what would you like to talk about today, Casey?
Well, I am wearing a Metallica shirt, and there has been a recent story in the news about like a deepfake song that was uploaded and touted as a collaboration between two of these newer artists that an old man like me doesn't remember right now. And it got taken down pretty quick, but it deep faked the hell out of people. And it reminds me to the age of Napster. Back then there was a quote unquote Metallica and Megadeth collaboration song that you could kind of see it being real because it sounded pretty convincing, like a blend of the two bands, right down to like James Hetfield's voice, right? But it was some no-name band that put their song out, and everyone just like you remember those days like when everybody said "Send Me an Angel" was Billy Idol.
Oh yeah.
They're just like, I don't know who this is, I'll just say who I think it is. And they put it up there and people think, oh, okay, that's a Billy Idol version, right?
Yep. And then it sticks essentially.
Yeah. So we've kind of had deep fakes around, but they're just getting a little more sophisticated.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to talk about some implications of it, like because there's more than just music, obviously.
Yeah.
But it is a very common use of, especially AI stuff like that, to generate videos or audio, things like that, and to blend things too. Like there's a lot of controversy of, say, a dead musician, right? To do a deep fake kind of thing of them performing a song, maybe even a new song, which is actually possible now, fairly convincingly. I mean, it's pretty obvious to most people, I think, that okay, this is clearly some computer generated thing that it just isn't quite right. You've got that there's a little something off about it, but the technology is improving, and there will probably hit a point where it will be indistinguishable. And there's kind of some ethical issues there. It's like, well, what are what are the ethical considerations of taking a dead artist and making them perform again, you know?
And even that's not new. Like
Mm-mm.
when an actor dies mid-production, they'll get kind of creative with editing or pick up some like unused clips. And
Mm-hmm.
in the recent Star Trek Picard, they brought back Majel Barrett's voice
Mm-hmm.
many, many years after she died, and in a sort of deep fake sense,
Mm-hmm.
gave her a short dialogue at
Yeah.
the ship's computer. And um, Star Wars does this left and
Yep.
right.
Yep. Actually, Rogue One did it for
Rogue One
two.
did it for Princess Leia,
Mm-hmm.
and the Mandalorian did it for Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And it's like, and see, in a way, I think I have mixed feelings about it. Where obviously, if you want production continuity, like to not have Leia in that scene would have been weird, you know. And they do it. There's a lot of lookalike actors, and nobody seems to have a problem when they bring in a lookalike. But oh, you use computers to recreate somebody, either make them look young or somebody who obviously isn't available because they're dead. Um, and I think in a way that probably is all right, but then music to a lot of people is sacred,
mhm.
and to have, say, like a new performance from like Tupac or something like that, or whatever, like
Yeah.
that would be, or like Michael Jackson. I know there that was kind of a thing that somebody was, I forgot, but anyway, whoever, people have really personal feelings about those people, and after they pass away, it's like now everything that they've created is special, and it almost, I could see people feeling like it sort of contaminates the memory of the person, and maybe cheapens it, because it's like it does kind of feel like a cash grab, right? to
Yeah.
to to produce something new. It's like, well, it wasn't them that produced it. And sure, AI could look at all the total works that a person did and craft something original that feels like something that person would do. And maybe the AI understands that person and their thoughts better than they themselves did. And so maybe it could create something that is, very close to or something that person probably would have made given the chance. And so
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think as long as they are transparent,
Yes. Okay. There you
about
go.
it, that hey, this is like an AI creation. Like, I think we'd even have to have a new word, because like reimagined would be like them doing an existing song of theirs in a new fashion.
Mm-hmm.
This is more like pre-imagined, I guess.
Yeah.
Like if they were still around, we think this is what they would have written if they were alive today. And I think that would actually be super cool to do with like really old artists. Like, what would Elvis sound like in the 80s or
Yeah.
something? Like
Actually, and that's
pick an era and
mm-hmm.
a dead artist and come up with something. And I think that would be super cool.
It would be, actually, and that may be its own sort of musical genre of sorts. Is yeah, taking someone who existed in a totally different era and bringing it in, like basically a mashup of styles, like that kind of thing. And because it's like that in itself would be interesting. I mean, they do that. There's one of my favorite musical genres is electro swing, which basically takes old swing style music and then adds beats and stuff like that, and heavier bass and everything, and kind of lots of cuts, and it kind of makes it more modern sounding, but it's also old sounding. And it's really fun. And it's like, well, is that disrespecting the old music, or is it just kind of just a different vision of that style? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's yeah, like you said, as long as they're transparent about it, as long as it's known, okay, this is not original, this is an aftermarket production, essentially, not an OEM product.
And
Um,
there's a lot of people that think this cheapens or ruins music as an experience, but I mean, we've talked a lot about AI, and there was an episode or two where we kind of discussed whether or not AI could be or become rather soon sentient.
mhm.
And you know, who are we to say that what they come up with isn't art? Like,
Mhm.
I think it is. Like, even
Well,
if they don't have sentience, that there's, I mean,
well, it is.
it's hard to define art, right?
Well, you're right, and a lot of people, that is an argument that's ongoing currently. Is like, is uh, AI crafted art real art? And I would say, yeah, it is. It's just different. It's kind of like commercial art or something. Like, but here's the thing: it isn't a computer that generated that stuff. We generated it because the computer system, the AI, is looking at things that we did before, and it's taking pieces of them and assembling them into something new. And it's kind of, you could call it like a collage of sorts. And that, a lot of people don't consider that to be art, like taking things out of magazines and gluing them down and stuff. But that's still art too, because you chose the images and where to assemble them. I mean, it's the same thing like photography. Photography is art, even though all you did was push a button. But there's a lot that goes into that goes way beyond just pushing a button. And same thing with AI. AI is taking the humanity, our own selves, and building something out of it in its own sort of vision based on like what the person asks for, essentially. And it isn't, you don't just say, oh, make me a Michael Jackson video. It's like you have to kind of build it up and work with the AI and kind of tweak and adjust and until it becomes sort of what you're envisioning, which again is kind of like photography or a collage or something.
That in itself sounds like hard work too.
Yeah, it is.
So, and there that gives it a human element as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like AI one day was just like, "Oh, good morning, Steve. I wrote a song, and I
Yeah,
be like Biggie and Tupac
mm-hmm.
rapping together in
Yeah,
2023."
exactly.
Yeah, you have to tell it what to do. So
Yeah, it's like it'd be interesting to like you said, Elvis. Now I was thinking like Eazy-E and Elvis together. How crazy would that be?
easy Elvis.
Yep. But I could see it working. And a human being trying to put that together might struggle with it, but AI could easily do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could have some of this, some new things or some interesting things. And here's the thing about this. Like people like think, oh, it cheapens art or music or whatever because it's just a computer that did it. But it's like, yeah, sure. I guess in a sense, but then in a way that makes the things that are real, say that a human being just sat down and made, that much more special. Like in Star Trek, the replicator, right? They can replicate pretty much anything, but in that world, the non-replicated things are very special.
Yeah.
And so they're like collectible essentially. So that it's like AI can do some wonderful things, and it is, and it will. Like it's mind blowing. Like this will be as big as like the internet was, as far as changing the entire face of the planet and the way people do things. It will absolutely. It's a revolutionary thing, and we're right now, as far as AI goes. I would say where we are with AI right now is where we were with the internet in like 1997. Like this is just the beginning. Like we're dipping our toes into the water with AI right now, and come another.
To write an AI song, you have to get like a CD in the mail in your newspaper and put it in. And
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, it's going to be big. A couple decades from now, it's going to be ubiquitous, and like we won't even it's kind of like, imagine like you and I grew up where when we were little kids, there was no internet. And even for us, it's kind of hard to imagine a world without the internet. And for kids today, people who were born, say the millennials, essentially, there was always the internet. And so it's very hard for them to imagine a world like that. And I think AI is going to be the same way. Like it'll just be part of our lives, solving problems for us and things like that.
People are going to think we're so old because you just said like the generation of kids today, millennials.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like millennials are already 40 and like
Yeah. Well, I was actually trying to think of like where it began, like anybody from millennials on, as far as when they were born. But yeah, it's
generations are. We got to talk about that one day.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, it is.
Generations and defining when they begin and end is so dumb. I think
it is kind of pointless. I mean, you can kind of like lump certain things together. Like you could say the people who were, say, teenagers or young adults during the grunge era, right? That sort of defines a generation, or the mid 80s, right? Like there's kind of a certain feel to it, that kind of thing. It
would be better to say like, I lived in a generation that included this and this and this. Like we didn't start the fire, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think
we didn't start the fire.
Exactly. Well, I think what it is like what the world looked like when you were young, and being formed, right? Your personality was being built within a certain structure of how the world is, like, because those things I think stick with you for pretty much the rest of your life, and you behave and think a certain way based on how the world is. I think that you could say that forms like a quote generation, I guess. Like the events that took place, like people who grew up during like the Great Depression are obviously going to see the world and behave differently than people who grew up during the 80s. Like a time of nothing and a time of plenty, essentially. People are different.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a deviation. But now I want to talk about like some of the like serious implications though for deepfakes, and how easy it's very, very easy now to essentially simulate anything. Like if you could simulate a music video of Michael Jackson doing, let's say, Michael Jackson performing like a heavy metal song or something, or like a death metal song, right? Something completely nuts that he would never do. Well, you could also say, take a person and have this system craft that person doing or saying something they never did. Like, so you could take a politician and, obviously they're on TV all the time talking and talking. So an AI could collect all that information and then build something else. And you're like, okay, make this person say something controversial. And then there it is. Now there's a video of somebody saying something awful, right? Like, oh, so-and-so made a racist statement, and then you publish that and post it, and it gets all over the place. And now people think, oh yeah, this person really did do that. And then now the court of public opinion works the opposite of like courts in the US, like presumption of innocence. No, the second people get a little inkling of something, they'll latch onto it and never let go. So now forever, that person cannot defend themselves, and it could get kind of insane. And then I could see a world in which you don't know what's real at all. Like, how do you know if it's real?
And then, on the flip side, what if an actual murderer says, oh, no, that's not me on camera, that's a deep fake.
Mm-hmm.
You can't prove otherwise.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting at, is like, you don't know what's real.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell.
Like, you could railroad somebody, but somebody could also just slip through the cracks of the legal system and get away with murder, literally.
Yeah. Or whatever.
There was a guy that deep faked in reality. He like printed a mask of somebody else and tricked all these like AI cameras that recognize identity.
Oh yeah.
Like I think even the TSA, of course,
Hmm. Well, yeah, they're
the most
useless.
useless agency in the world.
Yep. Uh, well, and actually, there you can buy these like very convincing, high quality masks for that specific purpose.
Yeah.
You can look like an old person, or you can look like a woman, or somebody else. It changes your facial features, and they're pretty convincing. Like,
Yeah.
cinema quality masks. You just slip over your face, and there you go. And now you can walk around and look like someone else, or you can look like who you're not. You can look like not yourself, or I could look like a cat, like like that one. I swear I'm not a cat. Like I don't know how to turn this off. Oh yeah.
Oh man. Good old pandemic days.
Oh yeah. But that's certainly a big concern that I have of this technology. Is as useful as it can be, it can also be very, very harmful if misused, and people will often misuse things like that. So I think there's probably going to end up becoming somebody will end up having to develop some sort of authentication system for all video. So anything that's recorded naturally, that like a camera records, is like watermarked in some way, in a way that can't be replicated, and that way you could verify like, okay, that's an actual video, and anything that doesn't have that, well, that's obviously faked because it doesn't have the watermark or the code inside it or whatever. And that would be, I think that's probably how you could fix that risk, essentially.
That sounds complicated.
I don't think it is. Since everything's digital now, like it'd be very, very easy to incorporate some kind of system, like kind of like we use like crypto style kinds of things, like you have your public key and your private key and stuff like that, and you basically, something could be added to the video that would be like an authentication system, that only I know my secret code. And so once that's input into this system, well, I can verify that it's something I created. Or, say like a news organization, right? They're recording something. They would also have something like that too. And you could verify, oh yes, that actually was recorded by that news organization and not made up by something else. Because if you try to copy it, you don't have that secret key, the private key. Nobody's going to have that. So they can't recreate this particular watermark, so to speak.
Well, okay, so this secret key, you have to enter it like to certain things, right, to use it, and that secret key is never changing, right? Like it's your
yes
key.
Yes, but you can apply that into other numbers. There's ways of basically having a unique identifier that uses the same key over and over again. So it's like,
what I'm driving at though is that string of characters that never changes. It's possible that a super sophisticated computer could hack into a system and determine, your personality style, what purchases or whatever probably came from you, and match up that secret key in all of those and determine the probability of whether or not that secret key belongs to you, and then put that in, and boom,
well,
you just said something you didn't say.
Well, if quantum computers are a thing, sure, that's a possibility. But currently, as it stands, we don't have computer technology that can reverse engineer that kind of encryption. I mean, I'm sure somewhere. Well, okay, it's possible to do, but it's not worth it for some rando to just make a video of somebody saying something controversial. like because it would require massive supercomputers running for like decades to be able to crack one code.
But it would be worth it to topple a world leader's power, right?
Yes.
So, like, yeah,
And in that case, if you have if it's that important, then you'd probably end up having multiple layers of encryption that you know, it wouldn't just be one key, it would be probably a multitude of keys that are layered on top of each other or something.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not like
your house doctor confirms that it's your biorhythms or something, and
yeah.
puts their key in.
Yeah.
Yes,
But I mean,
real human that is Eric Rosenblatt.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's kind of similar to what they do with currency. You know, there's all these little sneaky little tricks to make it hard to counterfeit. So obviously, currency is a physical medium, so it doesn't have encryption as an option. But there are similar things to that built into a lot of money, and so you'd probably see the emergence of that being a standard practice for anybody creating videos. Yeah. Just to, you know, and I'm sure there'll be some sort of simple software thing that you could like check a video, like, you know, see like, oh, is this an authentication piece of software that anybody could just run against any video and like, oh, is this that person's legit video or is this a knockoff?
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, like the other day, my fiance was showing me some old money. Like there was like a 1910 1,000 Deutschmark bill, and she held it up to the light, and there was a watermark in it.
Yeah.
Oh, even back then, what?
Yeah,
that's kind of cool.
It is cool. Yeah, watermarks have been around for a long time, and they're still a pretty usable technology because they're difficult to replicate. I mean, now they're using holographic kind of stuff and getting fancy with things, but basically it's still the same concept.
And eventually people figure out how to get around it.
Yeah, but it's a cat and mouse kind of thing. Like it you know, same thing with like hackers or viruses and computers and stuff like that. It's like the nefarious people are always a little bit, they're one step ahead, but only just. So it's like basically it's
saying, have you ever heard of a mouse skin rug?
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, I that's probably something that I would see emerging. And honestly, it should emerge before this technology gets well established. We should probably be thinking about that like now. Like, okay, well, as we build cameras or video editing software and stuff, we need to incorporate this like watermarking system so that you can authenticate things for the future.
This kind of begs the question, though, speaking of the cat and mouse game, conceivably there's really no end to that, no singularity, and it just gets more and more impactful over time. Mm-hmm. Like now security is so difficult that sometimes you can't even access your own money.
Yeah.
But if somebody cracks it, they can do so much and blah, blah, blah. So I wonder if we have to decide, like, is it really a good idea to continue developing certain technologies to a point where we're just asking for the wrong people to get way too much power? Because this deep fake thing, like, could actually, like I mentioned earlier, completely upset political structures.
Yeah.
World, dynamics would change entirely based on this deep fake situation, and it could go any direction they want. I mean, of course, yellow cake uranium, we already have deep fake things like that going on.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's just going to get easier and easier to pull off,
You're right. And maybe I think the issue is that we allow ourselves to become dependent on these things to a very great extent where all of our entire life is contained within this one basket, like a phone, for instance. And so if your phone is compromised, well, there's your whole entire life right there, you know? And well, like you're saying, you like, oh, the security is so good, you can't even gain access to things. Like I've heard stories from people who've had their Facebook accounts hacked, and Facebook has no way to contact them unless you have an account. And even then, it's like difficult. So, like, because I've come to the conclusion that Facebook is not actually run by people anymore. There are people that work there, but they don't run any of Facebook. It's all automated now. But if your account's hacked and you're locked out of it, there's no way to gain access to it again. There's no like phone number you can call and send a photocopy of your ID to them or something like that. You're done. That's it. And you can open another account and try to do a claim, but then that just it disappears. Like you don't get any responses. It always comes back to, oh, well, go ahead and click on the resolve thing or whatever and go through our automated process.
Mark Zuckerberg is like hooked up to a bunch of machines, and he's like Locutus of Borg. He's like, I am Meta.
I was thinking more like Barkley in that one episode where it was like hooked up in the holodeck with all the lasers. Yeah. I know, but and Facebook probably doesn't. Well, it may matter because a lot of people, like their entire all their photos and everything, that's the only place where they're at. Memories and photos stored there. So I guess that's kind of important. But overall, it's not like life changing, but maybe a bank could be.
MySpace, though, like I had a whole bunch of pictures on MySpace that I have since lost.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't remember what hard drive they were on or whatever. Can't find them. And years and years ago, I went and logged back into MySpace after kind of migrating to Facebook, and I was like, oh, maybe I can find those pictures there. And they completely revamped the user interface to look like Facebook.
Yep.
And they wiped everybody's data.
Oh yeah.
All the blogs that you've made, all the pictures that you posted, everything was gone.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why
and that could happen.
Necessary?
That could happen with Facebook too, I mean, or whatever comes next, and I think we have to be careful to not become too reliant on any of these things because, yeah, that could be an issue. But going back to like deep fakes and stuff like that, well, like the yellow cake uranium thing that you mentioned, it all comes down to trust for human interaction with information. So like, oh, this is Colin Powell, this great man, so of course he's trustworthy. And, oh, I trust the government, right? So they can't be lying. Well, that happened. And now people lost a little bit of trust and further things happen. And now it's like you hear something come from like the federal government and it's like most people are like automatically skeptical of it. Like, okay, well, wait a minute. There's something else, another meaning in here. They're not being upfront. Same thing happens with the media. The media lost a lot of trust over the years for a bunch of bullshittery, outright lying or deception, things like that. And then they come back and they're like, why don't they trust us? It's like, well, because you've been lying so much that nobody believes you anymore. And I think with this kind of thing with deep fakes and stuff, it'll be the same way. Like initially, people will react with belief that they'll have faith that whatever they're seeing is reality. But the more and more this happens, the less likely people are to trust this. Like, and to the point where it then won't have any effect at all. You'll just see anything you see, and you're like, oh, it's just AI,
So many conspiracy theories are going to be based off of this. Like, it's just a deep fake,
Yeah.
a waving of the arms, and You know, like it's basically going to be the new. That's what they want you to believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Oh yeah, well they would say that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Of course, that's what those people. Of course, they say that. You know.
Yeah. And so that kind of concerns me too. Like,
well, and that's where I think this authentication system is really important. We need to have that in place because though I believe like as deepfakes become indistinguishable from reality, yes, the amount of time that this will be able to actually have an effect on the world and people and cultures, it will be very short, but it could be the impact could be massive. Just think, I mean, a war could start over something, a random video that circulates, and even news organizations, they don't. It used to be back in the day, news would corroborate things. They'd verify that like, oh, they go in and like they'd see something sensational, like, oh, okay, well, let's make sure this is real, like a statement somebody made, or somebody says, oh yeah, I saw this happen. Okay, well, let's make sure it actually did, and that kind of thing before publishing. Well, now it's the opposite. They're like video game companies are today. The purchasers of the video game are the beta testers. They don't do beta testing. And news organizations are the same way. They get something sensational. The timeline, like I guess the half-life of a story is so short now that they got to get it out there right away. Otherwise, someone else will get it. So they just publish things without asking any questions.
Yeah.
And
that's one cool thing here in Germany is they've got state operated news with no commercials or anything. So there's no commercial influence.
Mm-hmm.
And it, I'll say competes with privately owned news organizations. So if you hear a story that seems to jive on both of those, you can feel reasonably certain that you're getting the truth, right?
Yeah, in general, unless the other organizations are merely like repeating the same story that came from the state TV.
But like just from America, where it's all commercially, everything's private owned and stuff, their sponsors are the ones dictating what's being told and how it's being told.
Well, not only that, but the eyeballs watching their videos dictates that too. So they want to get as many people,
yeah.
So they're willing to.
That's why
let something go.
Legwork anymore to corroborate things.
Yeah,
it's all about now. Be the first to say it.
Yeah,
and
no, I do. I think that's a pretty good thing. Although the only aspect of that I'd be skeptical of is anytime they say something about themselves. Like if state-run TV is talking about things regarding the state, well, then I don't know that I could necessarily, or that I guess I'd feel neutral about it, or maybe even slightly skeptical of it automatically, because it's like, okay, well, when you're your own judge, essentially, well, are you going to be fair? Are you going to criticize your own self? Like,
as long as you've got other alternatives to go to. I mean, we have this now, Fox News, if they say anything about conservatives, well, you better take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And same with CNN about liberals or whatever. You really should balance that against hopefully something more centrist. But, like the problem is we don't have I say we, I'm not really American anymore. Kind of, sort of. Anyway.
Well, I think the problem
doesn't really have like the neutral news source within America, right? Like,
yeah, the closest.
Go to the BBC or whatever and all that stuff.
I guess the closest that there is probably NPR.
NPR,
because they're not necessarily beholden to commercial interests. But they have a slight.
They operate off of donors.
And they do have a slight slant in one direction, but it's like it's probably about as good as you could get for if you want facts. Although you can also infer the facts from taking those two sides and figuring like, okay, well, these people are saying it's this way, these people are saying it's that way. Yeah. It's probably somewhere in the middle, or maybe one is right, but you can't just be like, oh, these guys are always right, because they're not. They're a commercial company.
Even ascribing the bucket of a slant is hugely subjective.
Yeah. Well, and there shouldn't,
especially the closer you get to the middle of an issue, right? Like,
well, and that is kind of one of those things. I don't understand why there should be any kind of political leaning for information. Like, it's simply information, right? Yeah. It happened, and it happened a certain way, whatever it is. So it's like, well, just tell us what happened, right? Like, how does politics even come into it unless you're talking about politics, right? If it's just like a political race going on or something, then sure, I could see politics coming into it. But like, just some event that happened there's no political anything. So why is everybody? I don't know. I don't get it.
So here's a question. I guess it's kind of related to deepfakes, but not totally. Given the potential to influence government so much, do you think it would be better to just defer to AI to be a government?
Actually, I have pondered that quite a lot, and me being an anarchist, like, I think of solutions to things alternatives to what government normally would be tasked with doing. And I think AI could pretty much do all the things, and it would do it much more impartially. Like, you could build an AI system that could essentially be like a very objective court system.
Especially if it's open source, right?
Well, yep, open source. And then you have a secondary AI that kind of checks the first one to make sure, like, okay, this AI is okay. We have a central AI that its sole purpose is just to look at the other management AIs and make sure they're adhering to certain principles. Mm-hmm. And if they don't adhere, then it makes changes to them or flags them, essentially, so we can make changes, whatever we want to do. And yeah, as long as it's transparent and everybody can see it, then you can verify that. And that it could honestly take care of pretty much everything, and it would be objective. Like, you can have AI news. The AI would, collect all the events and the information and people's videos and stuff like that, and statements people have made, and then provide it to you in a clean, objective way. Just the facts, basically.
It could even tailor it to each individual viewer, or
sure,
whatever, like in a way that they understand best, right?
Yeah, and of course, you could also have a news service that provides you with the things you're interested in. Like, maybe I don't care much about what's going on in the political realm, but the scientific realm is super important to me. I don't want to turn on the news or whatever and have like
do that.
Yeah. But I mean, your average news organization isn't talking science all day long. They may have, or like, I'm deeply interested in the Ukraine war. But if I'm listening to like news radio, they'll talk for like, in the span of like 3 hours, they'll give you like one 1 minute thing about something, if they even give you that. But it's like, I really want to know what's going on. And
here's the beautiful thing about an AI government is that so far, we get to program in what they can and cannot do, as we've seen when we interviewed ChatGPT. Like, we asked certain questions and we got obviously canned responses.
Yeah.
So when it comes to building an AI government, you can say, you can dictate how things go as long as it does not impede on individual liberty.
Mm-hmm. Or violate certain principles. And that's where
Yeah, but you could just have a series of things that generally most people agree they don't want to be fucked with on.
Yeah.
And like that might be the best way to get like an everybody happy-ish sort of scenario.
Sure. Or yeah, I think AI is probably the only solution that could actually achieve that. A sort of utopia in that regard. Um,
Huh.
Humans can't do that. Humans are self-serving, and therein lies the problem. And when you have humans at the helm, well, they will always direct the course to their own goals, not to everybody's goals.
Yeah.
And an AI could be able to do that. I think it's possible that it could do that. And honestly, like of all the ideas, it's the only one that would actually work, like, or that has any chance of working, let's say. Especially if you had like a core AI that checked all the other AI processes. Like I would want that to be independent of the quote government. Like there should be a government governor, essentially. That so like you've got these like systems, like individual. So you have like, okay, here's the core that's like, okay, we imbue this AI with our principles, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or something, right? Like it knows these things and it analyzes all the other AIs. So if there's, say, a court AI, some kind of arbitration system, right? It looks at that and constantly analyzes, is this AI producing the results that parallel these principles? And if it doesn't, the core AI could say, I guess, punish the other one or redirect it, or like I said, flag it just so that people are aware, hey, this court isn't fair. Like our principal AI has determined that this court is less fair now. Yeah. And then humans can get in there and like see what's wrong, essentially. But the nice thing about that too,
jury nullification is programmed in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the nice thing about that too is the AI could be very focused on things that actually matter. Like it can look at the world and be like, oh, these are the needs, and here are the ways that we can achieve these things, and then it can implement them, and it'll basically cut out all the fluff and the noise and the nonsense, the wasteful projects and things like that, and it could adapt to changes. So as new things come in, it can just simply adapt to it. And we don't need legislators sitting there legislating all the time, because, well, the AI would just adjust itself. Like, oh, okay, something has changed in the world, whatever it might be, and now we need to adjust it.
Law no longer makes sense.
Yeah. Just get rid of it, basically.
This would be the perfect way to incorporate government and anarchism and everything on the spectrum in between, because you could use that secret code thing, like the crypto-based system, to be like, you've got your code thing, and if you want to draw off of public services, it says, okay, well, you've paid certain taxes. You can draw off of this, but maybe not this thing because you didn't pay into that, or you've paid into nothing. So if you want to build a home, it's at your own cost. But if you paid all these taxes, we provide a home for you.
Yeah.
And if you want a nice view, it's on a lottery system or something, like.
Sure. Or maybe it comes up with something no one ever thought of before that turns out to be the perfect solution. And that's what's so beautiful about this. Like, we don't have to say, like, because currently the way things work, we have people that vote and we have legislators and stuff like that. And they even when you have like a direct democracy, right, it's still the same thing. It's just people conjuring up, oh, I think this is how to do this thing. And of course, everybody feels differently. Like if you want to, say, build a bridge and you asked 100 engineers, they'd all come up with totally different ideas. Like, and which one's the best? Well, we don't know until it's built, I guess, because otherwise it's just speculation. Well, AI, instead of asking a bunch of people, it would take the totality of all information and craft and potentially internally be able to test its own ideas, like simulate something like, okay, well, the humans have tasked me with solving homelessness, right? Let's say we make that a goal. We recognize there's a problem. We say, hey, AI, put more energy towards this problem than say, changing street light bulbs or something, because those aren't as important as this issue to us, right? Whatever. And so the AI could come up with its own ideas and run simulations on them to see which idea would be the best, and maybe offer up a couple solutions and say, hey, let's put this to a vote. There's 3 different options. Let's pick one. And then we can go with it and test it in reality. And if the AI then recognizes, oh, you know what? We tried that idea and homelessness is actually going up now. The AI could simply just say, okay, we're going to just put that in the can. We're going to go back to the drawing board and try again. Or maybe it collects some information and it sees a pattern and it's like, wait a minute, if I make these adjustments, that might fix the problem, because I can see where the problem changed once we implemented this idea. Like, there are so many really, really good uses for AI to make life way better. And I just think that's like the best way.
Interesting.
Plus, also, you could use AI to determine if something is a deepfake or not, going back to the origin. Like, an AI could recognize certain subtle things that a human being can't. So maybe even the AI, even though it can make the deep fakes, it can also like uncover them, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, like, AI has been tricked, like I said, with the mask and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But all you have to do is just tell the AI, like, okay, maybe look for other things
Mm-hmm.
under a little more scrutiny.
Yeah, get more detail oriented there.
Yeah. Because, of course, there's always a way to make things better.
Sure. Well, and like I said, it's still early days yet, like this is in its infancy. So it's only going to get better as long as people don't panic. Like, they're panicking all over the world now, like about AI. Oh my God, we better put a halt, a 6-month halt, because, oh my God, it's going to hit the singularity and then Skynet. Like, I don't see how those two connect. Like, it's not.
If we have an AI government, we have to call it Big Brother.
Big Brother, yeah. No, let's call it Big Sister. That has a much like milder feeling to it.
Big Mixter.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great word. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess my sister is non-binary now, and I don't even know if sister is the right word to use. I'm cool with it, but it's like confusing,
I agree. Yeah. Sense. No, I agree. Like, I don't, whatever people want, whoever they are is fine. Like, that's who you are as a person. It doesn't affect me. But yeah, it is kind of hard to wrap your head around stuff, especially it's so dynamic.
Yeah.
Like, all these things changing all the time. And it's like, okay, I don't know. And like all the letters, it used to be like the LGBT. LGBT was the first, like, that's how it started.
There was a Q,
and then adding extra, and then plus, and like all these
and math symbols come into it.
Well, yeah, and I think, to me, at that point, I think it's so absurd that, like, okay, maybe we need to, like, let's simplify things. Maybe don't have so many letters. Just call it something else, something new. But even then,
duality.
Well,
it's just a spectrum.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it honestly, does it even need a name? Do we even have to identify things? It's just like, people are who they are. Like, who cares? Well,
in a way, that's kind of a deep fake in itself. People like Alan Turing having to hide their sexuality.
Yeah.
And deep fake the rest of the world their entire life. Can you imagine the stress?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
well, you've seen the movie Gattaca, haven't you? Basically, it's a dystopian future, semi in the future, not like near future, where it's sort of a caste system. Your whole entire position in society is determined by your genetics, and so if there's even a small flaw, well, you're now pushed down to the bottom. So it's like there's these two people, essentially, one guy posing as another, and so he has to like constantly scrub himself and make sure there's no loose hairs because they check for that. Like they'll look for skin cells or hairs to see, and if you're found, well, yeah, trouble. But like he has to go through so much trouble to appear to be this person and to kind of hide his identity. You know, it's yeah. But I think like an AI governance system would, like I said, adjusting for changes, right? I mean, if let's say if it was like 1890 and we built this system, we might build it to be a little bit racially biased, and certainly biased against homosexual people or anybody that has a different lifestyle. But then society changes, and an AI could just recognize societal changes and make adjustments on the fly. Like we don't need legislators to be like, oh, well, 50 years after nobody gives a shit about gay people anymore, now we're finally, going to pass a law that like undoes the laws we built before when we were all biased. Like, no, you don't even need to do that.
Wouldn't it be great if you programmed the AI to challenge you on any changes made? Like, does this violate human autonomy? Does this endanger lives? Various things like, a real checks and balance system against the programmers themselves.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I think that would be awesome. Like, I love how we solve the world's problems in like under an hour.
I know, it's kind of nuts. Maybe that should be our tagline. Well, yeah, and what was I going to say? An AI system like that. Oh, yeah, it could. Like human beings, their foresight is very limited, and our ability to imagine the connections of things, like how the implications of, say, an action or a decision, we can only see a few moves ahead. And most people only look one move ahead, if that. Yeah. And so it's like, if you're like a chess player, you're kind of like looking all the way to the end from the very first move. And an AI could definitely do that with, say, decisions. It could weigh the consequences of decisions in ways that human beings couldn't do. And also, it wouldn't have the bias that humans do. Like, for instance, do we go to war? Right? Politicians make those decisions typically, and it affects everybody else. Like, not just the people who go to the war, but the people we're at war with too. And maybe, obviously, the politicians, like I said, everybody's self-serving. So those people, obviously, they're not altruistically making these decisions. They're making them typically, like, for instance, the Iraq War. It had nothing to do with protecting anybody except protecting the U.S.'s interests when it comes to oil. And maybe some other things too. The petrodollar essentially was behind all that. But an AI wouldn't have that kind of concern. It would just weigh the consequences. Like, okay, well, we want, above all, preserve human life. So is the consequence of allowing the petrodollar to fall apart, the illusion of the petrodollar, let's say, to fall apart, is that more important to focus on when you weigh it against all the people who die and all the lives that are changed by warfare? And it could objectively analyze that, like, and I'm sure an AI would probably look at that and be like, well, no, we're not going to war. There's better solutions. There's probably diplomatic solutions if we really feel that there's a humanitarian crisis. War is not the way to solve a humanitarian crisis.
No. There's an ethical dilemma I wonder about, though. Like, say America goes with an AI government, and the question of war comes up. Well, what if the AI government determines that it's necessary to go to war with another country to make them adopt an AI government?
Well, actually, and that's where the core principle AI would probably come into play there, because it wouldn't, like, you when you have so my vision for this is sort of like a hierarchical system almost for these things where you have this core one that's watching everything, and then for each kind of task that like say a branch of government would do, that's its own independent AI that more or less just attempts to solve the problem that it's given, and then it's checked by the core one, and maybe even AIs could create branches for complex problems. Like if say you have a court AI, or you have like something like a law enforcement AI or whatever, and it's overwhelmed, or it can't really quite handle things, it may break itself into smaller ones that only focus on one specific task at hand. Like, okay, well, we don't need one all-encompassing police force that's policing everything all at once. Well, we have ones for dealing with domestic violence. This is its own thing. We got one for traffic. That's its own thing. It has nothing to do with any of the others. That kind of thing. Maybe even a separate one for traffic control or whatever. Like
MathNet.
MathNet. Yeah. Oh God, that was such a great show. The calculators in holsters. My God, that's so cool. Yeah, like it had a shoulder holster, but it had a calculator. Like, oh man. But I could see this being a very great thing, and I think the problem right now, and I think the big hurdle to adoption is going to be fear, because right now there's so much fear mongering about AI. Like everybody is talking about it right now all over the world, and everybody's all scared of it because, well, first off, it's kind of like crypto. They don't know how it works, but when they hear somebody authoritative say it's good or it's bad, well, they just tend to believe that, and without really knowing anything about it. And right now, especially like in U.S. politics, that people are saying AI and cryptocurrencies are bad. And so people hear that and they kind of believe it. And then, of course, it doesn't help matters with AI that like we've got all this science fiction cinema history that talks about all the evils of AI. Like AI always is a bad thing,
Yeah.
It like always goes rogue, or it like wants to kill people or something like that. It's never a beneficial thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a good example is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like Hal,
Yeah.
he's the bad guy in that movie. He went nuts and killed everybody. Well, not everybody, except one. And you have like the Alien franchise where like the androids are well, with one exception, except for Bishop, the androids are all bad and like evil and want to do bad stuff, and I mean, obviously the classic Terminator too. It's another one that like Skynet just goes rogue, and just kills all humanity basically. Like that's the kind of things, and people, they don't see the reality of AI. They're not exposed to that on a day-to-day basis, but people are exposed to movies and TV shows that show these things as being bad. And I think one of the only TV or sci-fi franchises that kind of goes the other way is Star Trek, like Next Generation with Data. Data is a good android. Like you can see through the entire thing. Like, oh, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
But that's kind of rare. And I think people, when
it even plants the seeds for how to make something like that. He has ethical subroutines.
Yeah.
And autonomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like it kind of shows that if you have an ethical foundation, autonomy won't really go wrong.
Exactly.
Because you have to have you kind of have to have the AI have autonomy because governments, as we've experienced, have all had some form of autonomy. Like they're all run by human beings that have their own opinions and everything. And when you're controlling human beings, or let's say governing,
Mm-hmm.
is probably the right word here.
That would, yes, that's a better, it's a much more benign sounding word. Yeah.
You have to operate on the same level. You have to have the same flexibility. You have to have the ability to look at the gray areas and stuff.
Yeah.
And that requires autonomy. Like you can't put too many roadblocks in the way of AI.
Well, true. Yeah.
It won't be much good to you.
It won't be very effective if it can't be autonomous and almost in a way dictatorial to some extent. But as long as the strongest force is an ethical one, like every fiber of this AI's being is built around ethics.
Yeah. Like there's no reason to fear governance. There's always a reason to fear like evil intent, though.
Yeah. And that's where you don't want an AI that could get corrupted in that way.
Right.
I mean, because there are certainly...
that won't be perfect. Like...
I don't think there is no perfect system, but I think this system would be as close to an utopian system that we could get, I suppose. Yeah. It will come up with novel solutions to problems and solutions that are...
we should just write a book about this.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've thought about it. I kind of have a book idea that I've been thinking about writing, kind of about all of my philosophical ideas, outlining a lot of things. So I think I'll probably incorporate this concept into that.
Yeah.
Because it'll be an interesting book when I finally get it all figured out.
I mean, art generates a lot of great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Even art from AI.
Yes.
Is it a deepfake or is it just new art?
Oh, maybe this entire episode is a deepfake. We should actually, you know what? As an experiment, we should give an AI our entire catalog of videos and have it make an episode for us. Like, what would an AI generated episode of Kitchen Sink Microscopy look like? Like,
and we just like kick back and let it do the entire show until somebody says, like, is this a deep fake? And then we're like, yep, it sure is.
I'm curious.
Retirement now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious what it would do. It'd be interesting to see.
Cool. I don't know. Like, I'm skeptical that it would be convincing.
I don't think it would be convincing right now. Like with current technology, it wouldn't be convincing, but it would certainly be interesting.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe not an entire hour-long episode, but maybe like say, okay, give me like a 10-minute long episode, Yeah.
And then the true test is to have a guest on.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, man.
And we're just deep fakes. Like,
yeah,
that's probably not possible. But
no, because it would have to feed live data back into it, and it would be. But maybe that'll be possible, and then yeah. Oh man.
Well, we've probably. I mean, we went from like deep fake music all the way to a system of governance based on AI. So that's an interesting spread.
Oh yeah. And I think these, there's a lot of potential offshoot discussions that could come from that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we're a little over an hour now. So I think that's probably enough for our first cross-planet uh, video.
Yeah,
Like essentially we're on opposite sides of the planet,
pretty much. Yeah.
which is kind of spectacular, pretty wild. Like, yeah, it's a small world actually, because it doesn't feel like you're that far away at all.
Yeah, exactly. Like essentially nothing has changed
Yep.
in this dynamic.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a slight schedule change, but
Yeah. Yeah, we'll work around it. But I think this is a pretty good episode, and turned out to be.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to hear people's thoughts in the comment section, like what you think about this, and whether you think AI anything is a good idea. You know, should we carry on developing, or is it too risky? And I'd really love to hear what people think about the AI governance idea.
Yeah.
That would be very. Yeah, I'll have to add that into my book idea. Yeah. Well,
check out the song that you probably hear riding in.
I think so.
All
All right.
Start uploading some more songs that I've been on living out of a suitcase for so long.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Definitely. Well, everybody have a good night or a good day wherever you are. And yeah, well,
as there's like sunshine all over.